I think the culture, obviously post the closure, was still very much the company town, the Friday night, the workmen's clubs. You know, I even though I was working in outdoor activities and lots, I still went to concert. I still went to the Steel Club, you know, the Top Club. So the culture didn't appear to change much for a number of years until the real sort of economic problems started. Because obviously redundancy payments sort of staved that economic problem off for a couple of years. But the feeling sort of my age group was that this was our norm. I know certainly for our parents, our older generation, the world had been turned upside down, but we'd never had that stability, that normal structure, that shift work pattern. So therefore, the new world wasn't any different to our old world. So I think for our generation, it was totally different to our parents. I'm looking back, there's two things. I think the community certainly benefited from the change and the widening of opportunities. There's no doubt about that. I think that was tempered certainly by the political situation around the fact that Concert is on the top of the hill at the far end of a local authority with a very isolated district council at the time. I think if the steelworks had been in the middle of somewhere like Easington or even Durham, I think the whole political landscape would have been different for Concert.
In what respect?
Well, I think from looking back from my perspective, the district council was very much isolated as a council in the local authority. The reason for putting new development, new economies up on the top of a hill in Concert, with all of the transport routes have been taken away, I don't think there was a strong argument for that, and I think the area suffered because of that. I think the downside for the community is obviously the legacy, the fact that we've always had short-term industry here. Yeah, and possibly for the future we'll always have short-term industry here because of the location.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right, because we tried to get a factories in Concert and the council weren't very helpful, and we even travelled to the middle of Newcastle, Teesside, A, to Teesside to see what grants they were getting, and B, to Newcastle because we could get the grants, but you couldn't get them in Concert. It was only when we come back from Concert from Newcastle and told the council our plans that we were given grants in Concert. So we went to other areas to find out what they were, brought it back toward the council, and the council finally came out our way of thinking and give us grants towards factories to keep the employment in Concert, because at the time we could have took 10 people down to Newcastle who all lived in Concert. But the council weren't very forthcoming.
Yeah, do you think that was part of, that insularity of Concert? Do you think it's a kind of almost a closed community, or being a devil's advocate?
I think one of the problems was they looked at manufacturing industry, and they stuck to manufacturing industry. As I mentioned, people come from outside, from Midlands, with a manufacturing company and set up, but trying to set a service company up in Concert, there wasn't opposition to it, but there wasn't much help to it compared to what British Steel Industry give us to what the local council give us. I mean, we actually threatened, we drew plans for a factory on the Team Valley. That's how desperate it got. But when we came back with the plans on the factory on the Team Valley, Concert Council said, oh, just a minute. And all of a sudden, another factory appeared, which wasn't available the week we went to Newcastle. We didn't want to move out of Concert, all our employment was Concert. But the council, it took a long time.
Yeah, and was that because you think that the council didn't really, when the works were there, so much of their life was kind of, well, the works, the rates we get from the works and the money you get from the works and the people being employed, we don't have to think about anything else. Was that, or was it just a bunch of people that happened to be there at the time that weren't terribly?
No comment. Can't answer your question. We're not on there. No, but yes.
No, but I believe it's down to the structures that we created around the whole area. I mean, the education system didn't generate entrepreneurs. No way that you needed entrepreneurs in the 3 secondary schools around here. So the whole system was not geared towards that. I mean, I tend to think slightly different from a lot of people of my age at the time, and I struggled badly in that education system. I don't think it was just the individuals in the local authority. I think it was the structure around the local authority, and for decades the steelworks had informed the whole structure of the Downside area. So I don't think it was just a case of bad individuals at any one time in life. I think it was the whole structure. And I mean, I have family in South Wales, and they went through very, very similar sort of processes.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, I come from Jarrow, and the sort of educational system he describes, very similar to what I went through. That you were geared towards working in the shipyard. That's everything. All the guys that I knew were going to be in the shipyard as a fitter or whatever it may be, because it was the shipyards in the south side. They were closed 83, but when we left school there was jobs. 63, 64, you would just automatically walk into a job. That was part of it, and the educational system reflected that.
Well, I think it was, everybody got a job at the company, so they didn't channel people to university. Now it's, you must go to university if you want a job. We had Consett Technical College, so as we said last week, all our trades was backed up by a technical college. When you went to technical college, there was cooks from the hospital, there was typists from the company, there was technical people. Everybody went to Consett Technical College. And then in 1980, we were quite happy. We didn't have to go to university. We got a good job. We were fairly well paid. We worked hard and we were well paid. But 1980, people of our age, as we were saying the other week, 30-year-old, we got to kick up the backside. And that was when we became our own bosses, or moved into different spheres, and did much better, when you think about it, in the new sphere than what we did in the company, because the security was there. I mean, you had to kill somebody in the company to get sacked almost, didn't you? You were just there. It was a lifetime job, But once it closed, so people maybe sitting on the potential in 1970 to 1980, when 1980 come, that'd go out and use that potential which they'd had, but wasn't being used because they were, we all thought we had jobs for life, sitting behind the desk.
Different generation.
But now, because people are pushed to go to university, they're pushed to go to higher education, but it doesn't make them better people when they're mid-20s.
Not necessarily.